We had some minimum requirements. We needed to engage our students much more effectively. We needed to develop a system, and we had introduced the subject but not successfully. Engagement was really poor in that first year. Rote learning was totally insufficient for the subject area, and as the lecturer I knew what students needed to know, but that was insufficient too, because students themselves needed to understand why they needed to know something, what its relevance was to them and to their future employment, and when and how they should apply that knowledge which they had gained. So we moved the delivery to a whole year-long format of a 1-hour lecture and a 2-hour seminar workshop spread across our academic year. And we introduced exams, 2 in a year. But the question remained, very importantly, how to achieve student engagement and success with an assessment programme they had already declared they feared, and to get them to engage with the material that they found complex in a subject area they considered overwhelming. So at this point, I turned to mining my own personal experience. And as a child at school in the UK, I had hit a block when it came to learning French. In short, I failed. Declared by the teacher to be a failure, I'm ashamed to say I gave up and lived into adulthood ignorant of not much more than oui, merci, and non. But in my 30s I ended up catapulted to live work in France, and I had to learn French to survive, and in that process discovered 3 essential educational truths which you see here enshrined in the motto of the French Republic. My learning happened ubiquitously when I was free to learn. I had liberté when my learning had independence from didactic pedagogy, the structural approach or the situational language teaching. It had égalité when I felt that my efforts, if not my outcomes, let's be honest, were equal to those around me and they had equal value. And fraternité when through the fellowship of others they shared their knowledge with me to enhance my own learning. I also discovered what I personally consider the fundamental lesson in education. It's okay, indeed it's absolutely vital to the learning process to make mistakes. So, my learning of French was proactive and reactive simultaneously. Learning came about from necessity, encouraging motivation and demonstrating relevance. It enshrined involvement equating to experiential learning. I was free to learn what I needed as I needed it, immersed and involved in my own learning, taking my own pace. It was proactive and reactive, and I increased my knowledge by sharing my learning experience with others and having them share their learning experience and knowledge with me. And it worked, so I applied this for our students, or should I say for my students. It led me to develop a process to assist students and staff in delivering and assimilating, in this instance, law and public administration, but large, weighty, complex subject units. The way of teaching and learning a complex subject effectively does not have to be the same as that. Too often people try to use technologies that are inaccessible because of their complexity. I needed accessible technology that would make all students equal in its use. The vehicle I suggested and selected initially, and we've stuck with, has been our virtual learning blog through which we deliver course materials, and it's the first port of call for all our students anyway. Students use the blog to evaluate every session, promoting deeper learning. They identify what is important, reflect on what they've learned, and construct a meaning for themselves, combining previous knowledge with new. They're unable to avoid the more challenging or the less appealing aspects of the curriculum, however hard they try, and they're so more likely to gain a comprehensive grounding in the law and the systems relevant to the work of a journalist. Teaching's proactive. It engages with examples around us. So one week we could be looking at WikiLeaks. Another week we could be looking at the police action in London's student riots over tuition fees. We could be looking at an election. The technology is there to support the learning process and deeper learning, not to take the place of good, engaging teaching. So how does it work? Using our VLE, which is a form of Blackboard, the students and the staff develop responsive learning with realistic material. The students are effectively writing their own exam paper in a process of continuous evaluation and consideration. After every week's lecture and workshop, students blog their top 3 questions and answers that they have identified they need to know from that session. We did start with 5 top questions and answers, but it proved too many. Lecturers can add questions if there are areas that students fail to explore for whatever reason, and they can request answers. We're not generous enough to post the answers to, we just signpost the areas that students need to investigate. Scenario-based questions are also included to test student professional understanding as well as factual knowledge. Lecturers then go in and evaluate student understanding and progress, commenting where it's necessary. I introduced a pilot scheme in 2007 to 8 while I taught the subject, but my role has now moved on and the subject is now being taught by another lecturer using this format.